Hello, everyone. Welcome to Saturday morning's edition of Weekend Waypoints. I'm Joe Healy, D1 Baseball, here with SEC Extra Weekend Waypoints. Going to recap Friday's action around the SEC, take a little look ahead at Saturday's action around the conference. Friday, for the most part, lived up to the advanced billing of being a blockbuster day of games, and really only rain ruined it in some places. I know here in Columbia, obviously we lost the South Carolina Columbia game. Mississippi State, Mount St. Mary's got pushed. Auburn and UConn got pushed. Georgia Tech got suspended, and will have to be picked up some other time because that's a split venue series, so can't just pick it up, at a different stadium the next day. Well, I guess you could, but it's more complicated than just a traditional series. So anyway, but otherwise a really good Friday. I've got the scoreboard, as you can see, pulled up here from yesterday's action. We started early. Kentucky had to move their game against Lipscomb up to 1 o'clock to avoid some weather. And even at the end of that game, it looked pretty nasty in Lexington, but they got it finished. And then we went all the way through to, late night with LSU in Texas. I think it ended here at about 12:35 Eastern time. And with LSU getting the win over Texas 6-3. Got a little dicey at the end. I mean, not really. That game never really felt in doubt, even in the ninth inning. Texas made a little bit of a push in the ninth against Ujoa, but ultimately LSU closes it out for the win, and it really controlled that game from beginning to end. I'll talk a little bit more about that game as we get going. We've already got a comment on X, Jason Armstrong, an LSU fan. Can we overreact to the LSU win, please and thank you? It was impressive, Jason. Not going to lie to you. I mean, you saw a lot of stuff you like from an LSU standpoint in that game. But yeah, we will get to it here a little bit later in the show. I've got some notes on that. So certainly we will get to whether or not we'll overreact. I'll let you decide, Jason. But we will at least react to it. Whether it's overreacting or underreacting, I suppose will be up to you. Let's start off with the game of the day from Friday, and it's probably not exactly what you think. Certainly, LSU Texas has a claim to that, but we'll talk about that in a different segment. I'm actually going to go with the Iowa Ole Miss game because this game was kind of wild in a lot of ways, and it might be one that you, unless you're an Ole Miss fan, of course, or an Ole Miss hater, maybe just trying to look in and see if Ole Miss was going to lose the opener. You may not have caught up with it just because it was kind of happening at the time. Everything else was kind of coming to a head in the league. So flew under the radar a little bit, but a 13-7 win for Iowa. And look, the thing here, and you can see on the line score here, the Iowa bullpen tried to do the thing that it had been doing. We'll go click over their stats here. You can see here that Brecht was great. This is what happened last weekend against Auburn for Iowa. Brecht was great. And then as soon as the bullpen comes in, it just was not the same. Anthony Watts here walked 5 guys in 2 innings. Then they cycle through a few guys before they finally find someone who can get some outs. But, Iowa was up 7-2, as you can see from this line score, after this 2 spot in the top of the 7th. Ole Miss scores 5 in the bottom 8 to tie this thing at 7-7. And then Iowa comes right back out and scores 6 in the top of the 9th. So Iowa's bullpen tried to do the thing, and ultimately Ole Miss's bullpen actually ends up doing the thing and giving up the game there that was frankly winnable, especially when they come back and tie it 7-7. At that point, you kind of expect, okay, Ole Miss is going to come back and win this game, and they just couldn't get it done. You could see here from the Ole Miss side of things, really, Connor Spencer got hung with the loss here with the 6 runs. And not to peg it on any one guy, because obviously you needed to get to that point, and Gunnar Dennis didn't have a very good start. Braden Jones was the first arm out of the bullpen. Braylon Jones, first arm out of the bullpen, and it wasn't that effective. So you can't just peg it on Connor Spencer out of the bullpen, but obviously he gets hung with the loss and gives up ultimately 6 runs in a third of an inning. So that was just wild, because it went exactly as you thought. Hey, if Ole Miss is going to win this game, this is going to kind of have to be how it is. We saw the blueprint from Auburn last weekend. It's fight off Brody Brecht, stay in the game, jump on the bullpen. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, they really played with fire by getting down 7-2 at one point. You'd like to have kept that like a 1 or 2 run game. But so they followed the blueprint. They did what we thought they'd have to do. And ultimately that they just couldn't get it done. They had a little bullpen meltdown of their own. So certainly important for Ole Miss, honestly, to get these next 2 games, just to create some kind of momentum moving into, we have 1 week before SEC play, so still have a little bit of time to round into form before SEC play gets here. But certainly, Ole Miss kind of looking to be standing on a little firmer ground than what we've seen so far this season. Let's talk about the player of the day as I close out there. Some candidates. Devin Burks of Kentucky got the day started off early. He went 3 for 4, 3 runs batted in. RJ Austin from Vanderbilt in their win over the Raging Cajuns. That was a good game too. That game kind of opposite of the LSU Texas game, which never felt in doubt, never felt close. Even with a 7-3 win or 7-4 win, flip back over to the scoreboard, 7-4 win for Vanderbilt. That game felt pretty close, even as Vanderbilt was pulling away a little bit. So RJ Austin, a 3 for 4 day at the plate. Billy Amick for Tennessee in a big win over blowout win over Bowling Green. 2 for 2, but he made it count because those 2 hits were home runs, and he drove in 3 runs. Florida in their win over Miami. Both Cade Curlin and Jack Caglione went 3 for 5 with a home run. Those were big home runs too. Those home runs were the kind of the engine driving Florida pulling away from Miami there in what was a pretty close game throughout the early to middle innings. But the player of the day is, as Jason will appreciate, Jared Jones of LSU, 3 for 4, 2 doubles, a walk, and a home run in that win over Texas. And boy, howdy, was it a home run. I mean, it kind of just it makes you appreciate not just this hit from Jared Jones, but also just generally in college baseball these days. I think Steven Schock, my buddy and colleague at D1 Baseball, put it on Twitter last night that, you've got college guys hitting backside, no doubt home runs in big league ballparks. And that's what Jared Jones did. I mean, he hitting from the right side, takes a ball, out to right field, and there was never an ounce of doubt about where the ball was going. It ends up 10 to 12 rows deep in the right field stands for a big home run there. And that was kind of like, it felt like the final nail in the coffin for Texas in that game with that Jared Jones home run. Kind of took the air out of the balloon, if you will. And the lead up to that, I should mention with LSU, was that they did setting up to that point. They did a really good job with LeBaron Johnson. We talked about on Friday's episode, that was the pitching matchup of the day. More on Luke Holman shortly. And he was okay. Johnson was at keeping runs across the board. He held LSU scoreless until he got taken out, but he threw 90-something pitches and he wasn't through 5 innings. And, that just wasn't going to be – it just wasn't going to be deep enough. Yeah, didn't finish 4 innings. He only finished 3 innings. I was flipping over to check. 91 pitches in 3+ innings for LeBaron Johnson. I mean, LSU – grinded out every single plate appearance against LeBaron Johnson, got him out of the game early, and then was able to just work the Texas bullpen, which is a group that's still trying to figure out what it is and who should be in those high leverage roles and who does what. I mean, it still feels like a unit that's a little bit in flux. So we'll have to see what the Longhorns do to remedy that moving forward. But it was just a great offensive approach early on for LSU. But player of the game, Jared Jones. That backside home run is probably a swing that I'll remember for the rest of the season, just as being one of the most impressive that I've seen. Moving on to pitcher of the day. Spoiler alert, this is going to be Luke Holman, just because of not just the numbers, but the quality of the opponent. But before we talk more about him, let's let's talk about some other candidates who were kind of in consideration here. Hagen Smith was great again. Could have easily been the pitcher of the day, again this week. But 6 innings pitched, 1 hit, 1 run. Both the hit and the run came to the first batter of the game, the solo home run for Murray State to start off the game. So the rest of the way, he didn't allow a hit. Impressive stuff again. 1 hit, 1 run, 1 walk, 12 strikeouts for Hagen Smith in 6 innings. AJ Causey, who, as we mentioned on Friday's show, stepped into the Friday spot with AJ Russell out and really made a compelling argument that he should stay in the rotation even when and if Russell is back in the mix against, mind you, against Bowling Green, probably, certainly not going to be the best offense he faces. And I don't know, Bowling Green's probably not very good, but AJ Causey, 7 innings pitched, 1 hit, 1 run, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts, stepping in for Russell. Really impressive stuff there. Gives you a lot of confidence from a Tennessee standpoint that they've got options out there in the rotation. Ben Hess for Alabama continues to throw the ball extremely well. They blitzed Indiana. I mean, thought that was going to be a pretty good game, pretty competitive, and it really wasn't. It just flatly wasn't. Alabama scored 5 runs in the first, scored 7 in the third or the fourth. I forget which frame. It was 12-0 in the blink of an eye, and they end up winning 12-0 in 7 innings against the Hoosiers. But Hess throws 5 innings, 1 hit, no runs, 1 walk, 10 strikeouts for Ben Hess. Similarly, Ryan Prager of Texas A&M, he is yet to allow a run this season. Through 3 starts has Ryan Prager. In their win over Arizona State at Globe Life Field, 5 innings pitched, 1 hit, no runs, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts for Ryan Prager. Evan Oschenbeck came in after him and threw 4 shutout after him. So really good day on the mound for Texas A&M. More good news for Texas A&M on the mound. That was where we had some questions going into this season, and through 3 weekends, you certainly like what you've seen from A&M from a pitching standpoint. But the pitcher of the day, as I mentioned, Luke Holman against Texas, really commanded the game from the start, gave the LSU offense, even when it wasn't cashing in. It was pushing LeBaron Johnson early, but wasn't cashing in runs. Holman gave them confidence that, okay, we'll just wait this out. The runs will come. But he finishes with 5 2/3 innings, 3 hits, no runs, 1 walk, and 12 strikeouts against a good Texas team. There's your Friday guy, folks. If you're an LSU fan, like that is exactly what you wanted to see with Holman moving up to the Friday spot. Was that kind of performance against a good team. And look, he's not Paul Skeens. No one is, right? But I think he's shown you that he's a legit Friday guy in the SEC, and he's not going to be an automatic win in the same way that Skeens was last year. I can guarantee you that there's going to be some Friday games that get dropped. That's just baseball in the SEC, but he's going to be the guy that gives the Tigers either an advantage or a puncher's chance every single Friday on the mound. That's really what you're looking for from a Friday guy. So impressive stuff from Luke Holman. He's the pitcher of the day. Let's look forward to Saturday. Obviously, if it was a big Friday, it's a big Saturday. We've got tournament stuff. Let me pull up the today's schedule here. Let's see. Yep. So this is today's schedule, the Saturday schedule around the SEC. First game that's going to get going is in Houston at Minute Maid Park, Vanderbilt and Houston. Boy, obviously this is not an SEC topic, but Houston took a tough loss yesterday. The Minute Maid tournament is using the MLB zombie runner on second base, if you will, in extra innings. And so that happened yesterday. I was actually unaware of this until literally they came back from break and showed Houston with the runner on second base to start the 10th inning. Houston scores a run in the 10th inning. Texas State comes back and walks it off with a 2-run home run. But anyway, regardless, it's a pesky Houston team. Vanderbilt, obviously a heavy favorite there, but going to have to be a game where Vanderbilt plays well. Doubleheader, UConn and Auburn today after they got rained out yesterday. So look for that as part of a doubleheader. You'll see one thing here. It shows the suspended game, Georgia Tech, carrying over to today. That game will not be finished today. That's an error on the scoreboard that we're getting fixed. But because it's a 3-venue series, just like Clemson, South Carolina, they're not going to take a game that started at Georgia Tech yesterday, roll it over, and then finish it in Athens. Even with Georgia up 9-3, looks pretty much in hand, although it's just the 5th inning. They're not going to roll it over and finish that game in a different venue. So if that game gets finished, it'll probably be later this year as a midweek game or something, although it's kind of tricky that, is one of those teams going to drive the, couple hours between the two places to play 4 innings of baseball? We'll see. But that's obviously a tough deal there, and a bummer they didn't get to finish there. So, and then obviously we'll get started with South Carolina and Clemson here today, and that is my game of the day today, for a couple of reasons. One is just it's going to be highly anticipated. Everyone's bummed that yesterday's game didn't get played, so there's a little bit of pent-up demand there. And also, for both of these teams, the question was the pitching. It was, can South Carolina's pitching, which has put up really good numbers through 2 weekends, do the same against a very good Clemson lineup. And then on the flip side, Clemson's rotation in particular has, some decent numbers in some spots, but Billy Barlow, for example, has kind of struggled. Do those struggles continue, or do they kind of figure it out against a quality lineup like South Carolina? Well, now that you're only playing 2 games this weekend, suddenly now you've got 3 days worth of pitchers packed into 2 days. So the pitching actually should probably, at least in theory, on paper, improve, just because you've got more guys available over those 2 days where you can use your Sunday starter as a reliever at this point, whether on today or on Sunday to finish off the series. So that'll be a little bit of an interesting wrinkle there. Looking forward to that one. It's the neutral site game today, Segra Park, the minor league Columbia Fireflies ballpark in Columbia. Looking forward to getting that one started at 4 local time, 4 Eastern time out here in South Carolina. All right, quickly some plugs before I step away. I put out a Friday whip around. I didn't have a game in Columbia, so I just fired up the old content management system at D1 Baseball and just decided I'm going to write a quick whip around of every result in the SEC. So that is available on the site at SEC Extra if you want a quick synopsis of every game played in the league yesterday. Similarly, we've obviously got our D1 Digest at the main site, a recap of all the biggest things that happened from coast to coast around the country in college baseball. That is available. Kendall Rogers was in Houston, so if you're a Vanderbilt fan or an LSU fan, he's got information on those teams from his perspective from yesterday in Houston. Eric Sorensen, if you're an Aggie, Eric Sorensen was at Globe Life Field in Arlington and covered Texas A&M shutting down Arizona State yesterday. Mark, by the way, my colleague at Highway to Hoover, Mark Etheridge, put out a story on Jared Jones just the other day, actually. It's kind of timely with him having such a big day yesterday. So if you missed that, go back to SEC Extra and read that story he put out on Jared Jones. That was really good stuff. Aaron Fitt was in Frisco, so Bama fans, read Aaron about the blowout win over Indiana in Frisco. And of course, all of those folks will be in the same spots again today, including myself here in South Carolina. So we'll have more for you Sunday morning on the site. That's going to do it for this edition of Weekend Waypoints, everybody. Thanks for joining, and join me again tomorrow morning, Sunday morning, for our last edition of Weekend Waypoints this weekend. Thanks again for joining. Enjoy the baseball, folks.